We would cold call customers, and we would, you try to have some institutional knowledge about their business and bring up something that, they can tell that you know what you're talking about. And then once you get someone's attention, you just have to convince them to give you one shot. Typically, once I get on the phone with a prospect, it's pretty easy to get them to give you a shot, just because, like, what do they have to lose? Are you working with brokers already? Yes. Do you have freight today? Yes. Why don't you give me one load, and let me show you what we can do.
Yeah.
Show you what it's like to work with Edge. Show you what the future of freight looks like, and how good this business can be.
Yeah.
And if you say and then you get a shot, and then it's all about just picking up and delivering loads on time. If you pick up and deliver one load on time, they'll give you two more. Pick up and deliver two, they'll give you four more. You know what I mean? That's just how this business works. Back then, it was way easier because there was no visibility.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Freight Caviar Podcast. Today we are in Chicago at the Edge Logistics office here with William Kerr, the president and CEO.
Yep.
Awesome, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for accepting my invitation to be interviewed. I appreciate that.
I've never done one of these with all the cameras before, so
yeah?
I'm having fun with it. So
I have
far.
these cameras following me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a good combo. So we're gonna go over essentially your life, Edge capacity, and then I have Instagram questions that I know that you might not like, but
it's fine. Yeah.
We'll make
anything for the people.
Yeah, we'll be good. So, Will, could you give us a background of when you got into logistics and before you started Edge?
Yeah, sure. I actually kind of fell into it, ass backwards, like a lot of folks in this business do. My whole life, I always wanted to be a trader at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, trading lumber and pork bellies or corn or whatever futures. And I was a runner there in the pits, like doing all the trading cards and bringing them to the clerks and putting the trades in and all that when I was in college at DePaul University. And I did that for a few years. And when I was a senior, it was 2010. Maybe early 2011, they closed the Chicago Mercantile Exchange forever, and all commodities trading went virtual and online and pretty much automated. And it was during the financial crisis, and there was just a lot of changes, and this plan that I had in my head, was no longer an option, right? So I graduated from DePaul, started bartending up in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, up in Door County, and was just kind of up there applying to random jobs, totally directionless, not really sure what I was gonna do or what was gonna happen with the economy or whatever. And eventually I got a job at Echo Global Logistics as a entry-level carrier sales rep on their new full truckload team. Through one of my friends, Matt Fayette, who at the time was one of the big customer reps at Echo. Now I think he runs a big team at Salesforce or something like that. But he's a really great guy, and he got me an opportunity. I interviewed with John Fox, and John told me, you'll make it in this business if you work harder than everybody else. And we're looking for the Marines of logistics. We want the people who are going to be the first one's in and the last one's out. And if you're the first one in the office every day and the last one out every day, that about a year from now you're going to be one of the top reps. And that's a few of us. My co-founder Jordan Lonnie, our SVP of Truckload Dave Rzuska, and a bunch more people from that team back then. All went on to get huge jobs and run big companies in logistics. Jake Elprin from Everest was our boss.
No way.
Yeah.
He was my boss.
He was your boss too.
Yeah.
There you go. And so he was our boss back then, and we had a great team, and I learned a ton. Basically, we would convert an enterprise LTL account that they already had. At the time, Echo was very LTL focused, and they were just kind of getting into full truckload. And so we would take these big, national footprint enterprise shippers that were operating multiple facilities, having, regionalized freight networks. And we were, sourcing and just trying to find, capacity solutions, both for the long-term, short-term, spot, contract, whatever. And I just learned a ton about the business, and I really fell in love with it. It was a very difficult time in the industry. There was major slowdown in 11 and 12, major margin compression, very competitive, and eventually, I left Echo because we weren't making as much money as we were before, and I thought I was a genius, and that it was the manager's fault that we were no longer doing very well, and all these things that I've learned a lot more about now that I've had come further in my career and seen a few different sides of the deal. But I was there for about 2.5, 3 years. Then I got upset and left, and I was like, I'm going to go back into finance. So I got a job selling life insurance. Have anybody ever tried that? No. It's that's like the worst job ever. Yeah,
I could imagine.
The sale is something like, hey, Paul, I don't know if you've thought about this recently, but do you ever worry about what would happen to your family if you died? That's the sale. That's like the opener, and like you do that like 50 or 100 times a day, trying to get young people to buy whole life insurance, and it's like, oh my god. And then after about 6 months of that, I was like, you know what? Maybe that freight stuff wasn't so bad after all. And I think that happens a lot in this business.
Sure.
Like people get into it, get really into it, get burnt out, get upset, and then they go and they realize, what? Maybe I was pretty good at that, and maybe that was pretty fun, and maybe compared to a lot of other careers, it's not so bad. So I had that experience, and then I ended up coming back to the industry with my tail between my legs. I worked for a guy who was running another brokerage who used to work at Echo, and I worked there for like 9 months before I started Edge.
Okay.
So kind of same story. Did really well, was really into it.
Sure.
Something went wrong, and then I was just like, you know what? We could do this, right? At the same time, there was a lot going on in Chicago. There was, Coyote had just sold to UPS.
Sure.
Command hadn't sold to Echo yet, but there was a lot of rumors that Command was going to sell. AFN, Load Delivered, Circle 8, and a lot of these other great freight brokerage firms that are no longer around today. Were thriving. And I looked down the street at what Robbie Nathan was doing at Load Delivered, and I was like, you know what? Like if they can do it, then we can do it. So Jordan, Lonnie, and myself, started working on Edge at night while we were still working at the old shop. And once we got our business plan together, we raised a little bit of money from friends and family.
How much did you raise?
A little under $800,000.
Okay.
And we moved to Brooklyn, New York, because we had non-competes that had like radius restriction, geographical, like you can't start a freight brokerage within 150 miles of one of our offices, or something like that. So we moved to Brooklyn, which was Williamsburg and Greenpoint were like really hot at the time in 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Still very cool places to live, but back then it was like the young cool spot to be.
Sure.
So we went there. My father-in-law owned a auto rental business in New York, and they had a big parking lot basically. It was a parking lot. It wasn't like an office building or anything. And when we first started, we got a double wide trailer. Like the kind you ever in like Florida or something, and you see like a high school that they ran out of classrooms. So like in the tennis courts, they have like the trailer. You know what I mean? Like where the temporary overflow classrooms. Those things that you put them on stilts or whatever.
Yeah.
So we got one of those, and that's when we started Edge. We didn't have any heat or bathroom, but we had internet, and we had an unbelievable view of Manhattan.
Wow.
So, originally there was Jordan, myself, and 3 other guys, and we just started cold calling in September 2014, hoping for the best. You know, we originally just wanted to be, you know, we would have taken just, you know, if we could make a couple grand a day per guy, then, you know, that's a lot better than we were getting, you know, at the old shop. You know what I mean? So like, you know, that's good enough for us, right? But, you know, by New Year's Eve in 14, we had done over $1 million in sales.
Wow.
And we had opened up lines of business with, you know, some really great, you know, power shippers in the United States. And we were starting to do some real volume. And we're really building a brand in the carrier market. And yeah, once we got through, you know, the first 6 months, and we were able to be factored.
Yeah.
You know, because the first 6 months, nobody will take your loads.
Yep.
You know, like, yeah, no,
Totally.
like, even, God forbid you win a load from a customer.
Yeah.
You know, like now your problems have just started.
Yep.
Now you got to sell it to somebody before it picks up,
Yeah.
and no carrier will touch you.
Exactly.
Now the 10-foot pole. And so you end up paying 50% on pickup, 50% on delivery. Out of that 800 grand I told you about, we spent about 600 of it on freight.
Sure.
Just paying for freight to get moved
Yep.
for our customers, never getting paid. Because what would happen was we would pay the driver cash on delivery, and then he would never give us the paperwork.
What?
Yeah, and like, you know, or like, you know, whatever. Like, yeah, different thing. And we also, like, in the early days, we didn't have any systems, you know, like,
Sure.
we were just making it up as we went along. Like, I remember the first time we needed a Raycon, we went on Google and we got a PDF of a Raycon, and then we were like cutting and pasting all the stuff from the email onto
Sure.
the Raycon, you know? And, you know, when we first found out about invoicing and how like that works, and like how to bill the customers, like that was a rude awakening as well. That was very difficult. You know, we had to overcome all these, you know, little obstacles, you know, as they came up. You know, we didn't have any insurance until a customer asked us for it. You know, like that. That's what we're like, insurance. What do you mean insurance? The carriers have insurance. You know, you know, like all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of growing pains in the early days, but we got through it. And once we got our green check mark on the DAT,
Sure.
you know, the phone started ringing, and
Yeah.
it just went from there.
Okay.
Yeah, we did, you know, 10 million in 2015.
That was your first full year.
First full year.
You had 10 million.
Yeah.
And it was just you, Jordan, and someone else.
No, we had like, by this year 2, we had probably like 7 people.
7 people.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you move back to Chicago then?
No, we, after Brooklyn, so once we were in Brooklyn for about a year, it got to be very difficult. We had to hire people, and it got really hard to hire because we were living in New York where,
Yeah.
you know,
Expensive.
it's expensive, and it doesn't really fit our industry, to be honest with
Sure.
you. You know, from you know, it doesn't fit hardly anybody's industry. You know, unless you're like a hedge fund manager or something. Yeah. But our socialite, you know, like, but yeah. So we were gonna move, and we didn't want to move back to Chicago because we thought it was lame. You know, at the time,
Really?
we were like, we want to go do like.
Are you
something
originally
cool.
from Chicago?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Glencoe in the suburbs.
Nice.
But so we moved to Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And so I think early 16, we opened up Austin. We were there for about 2 years, and then we moved back to Chicago.
That was when Arrive opened up.
Yeah, it was Arrive and Edge started right about the exact same time.
Okay.
And we've taken 2 very different paths.
Sure.
And the result of those paths are that Arrive is about 10 times the size of us now.
Are they profitable though?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
You know, Matt's a good friend of mine. I respect what they do a ton. They've been one of the companies that we've always been growing with and growing
Sure.
against and competing with and comparing ourselves to. And what they've done is incredible. In you know, 8 or 9 years, they've gone from 0 to like 3 billion or something like that, and it's pretty special. Yeah. But you know, we just took a little bit of a different path. We went with the organic growth model.
Yeah.
Where you know all the growth at Edge has been paid for by our margins and the money that we've
Sure.
made reinvesting in the business.
So you haven't raised money since the original.
Yeah, we've never put another dollar in since the original money. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's all been organic.
I mean, I think that's a lot more difficult to do than.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. Yeah, there's let's just say there's pros and cons to
Sure,
doing both
sure.
to doing both strategies.
Yeah.
But for us, it was the way to go, and it's gotten us to where we are, and it's allowed us to have full autonomy and control, and creative license, and I think the biggest advantage to being totally independent is you can make very fast pivots, and that's very important in logistics, is to be able to look at what's happening and make a decision, and then go with it. You know?
We were just talking about Taylor before we recorded. When I got lunch with Taylor last month, he was like the difference between raising money and not. It's if you want to go fast, don't raise money. If you want to go farther, raise money. That's what he told me.
Simple. I think that's
simple,
a simplified.
Very simplified. But like,
I don't know how I feel about that, but Taylor's a very smart guy, and he's been through the VC process a number of times, and I bet for him that works. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when did you move to this office in Chicago?
Just earlier this year. I kind of blanking on it, but like maybe April.
Okay.
May.
But so you're in Austin. What can you give me the timeline of like Edge? So you were in New York.
New York in 14 and 15. In 15, we moved to Austin, but Austin and New York were both open for a while, overlapping. And we closed New York, and everybody was in Austin. And then we started Rosemont. Our first Chicago office was actually in Rosemont.
Okay.
And
which year was this?
16.
Okay.
Yeah, 16. And then we were there for about 2.5 years, and then we moved to Chicago. And in 17, late 17, we moved to 333 North Michigan Avenue in Michigan and Wacker.
Okay.
And then we were there for the last 5 years or so, or 4.5.
Sure.
And then we moved into this office.
Okay.
We got this one. This office was all built out like this already, and we just like inherited it and moved in, and it's really working out for us.
Awesome. So like we've been.
And we also have Detroit and Phoenix open.
Yeah, Phoenix just opened up. But
yeah, Phoenix just opened up last month.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering because you've been in business for almost 8 years now?
We're in year 9.
Year 9.
Yeah,
Okay.
September was our anniversary of opening in 14, so that was the 8th birthday. So now we're in like month 1 of year 9. Yeah.
Sure. Which year do you think out of those 9 was like the most significant in terms of like the growth for Edge?
Probably 18. 18 was a crazy year in freight.
I remember 18.
It was very accelerated market. We were we were a small company still.
Okay.
And we went from doing, I think, 27 million to doing 50 million that year. And we were able to onboard, a number of really big clients that have helped propel our growth, ever since then. And that's been, that was probably the big one where we took that big step from being a small, niche, service-focused freight brokerage firm to a big one. And another thing that we did that year was we launched Capacity, which was when we first, got all in on tech and automating the traditional Chicago freight brokerage experience.
Can you tell us more about the Capacity, Edge Capacity?
Yeah, Edge Capacity is a fully automated and transparent digital freight matching platform that's carrier facing. It's designed for fleets. It's designed to be used by dispatchers or load planners who are running multiple trucks.
Sure.
It allows them to see projected freight coming in based on awards and all that, and start to pre-plan and get on dedicated lists. We're able to really provide a totally individual and customized carrier experience based on their profile, what they want to get from us. And then we try to meet them wherever they want to be. We always say there's a place in this business for every carrier, and it's our job to offer that carrier real market options of what they want in real time. And through Capacity and through automation and through algorithmic load matching, we're able to get to the right answer a lot faster than we were before. And it doesn't. We always say that tech doesn't sell freight; people sell freight. I don't think that's ever going to change. But tech helps people sell way more freight way faster. And that's kind of the name of the freight brokerage business is who can figure out how to sell more loads per person. And if you can get the loads per person up, then everything else starts to fall into place in terms of making a transformative leap in the industry.
Sure.
And Capacity, we were I think the 3rd company to launch a DFM after Convoy and Uber, and it's been active since then, and we have tens of thousands of active carriers. We have way more people participating and bidding on freight than we even have loads. So the appetite for the carriers, for our digital freight matching platform, but also just digital freight matching in general, I think it's just growing exponentially every single year, and it just can't really be stopped, I don't believe, because both the customer experience and the carrier experience are so much better than the old way of doing business that it's just a matter of time before everybody gets used to it, because it's just so much easier, than like calling, waiting on hold, having 3 people trying to sell the same load to 3 carriers and who gets down furthest, whatever. Sure. And like the, posting loads that don't exist, or, all these little things that have gone on in the industry for years. And really all that does is create friction, right? And the friction is what costs us money, right? I always tell everybody, the big secret about freight brokerage is that, you don't make any money by getting paid more than everybody else does. Like, customers don't just pay certain carriers or brokers more than they pay everybody else. Like, there's a built-in market there that dictates what the rates are, right? Mm-hmm. And same thing, you don't just magically have trucks that pick up and deliver loads with excellent service for below market rates. That's just that's not a thing, So if you can't make money by getting paid more than everybody else, and you can't make money by paying less than everybody else, like, how do you make money, right? And the answer is by making less mistakes than everybody else. It's by getting it right the first time, and not having to change your plans, bounce loads, recover loads, take a contract load and book it in the day of market, or whatever, right? That's how we lose margin. So if we're able to not just book, the first cheapest carrier, but the best long-term fit for that customer, for that case, for that lane, for that load, whatever it may be, that's what we want to do. And capacity points us in that direction faster than we've ever been able to get there before. And instead of banging our head against the wall, talking to carriers calling in off the DAT or truck stop, or going on terminal search lists or carrier 411 lists, or whatever the old school sourcing tactics were, if we could just use data to find out what the carriers are really doing and what their fleets really look like and where they really are, and then offer them loads based on what they're really doing in real time, then we can have way better matching, and we can get to that right answer faster, But yeah, it's been great. It's powered. We don't expect carriers to wake up in the morning and be like, I'm gonna go see what Edge has for sale today. So it's all about sending out offers and then bringing people back into the network, right? Sure. So we reach out and we'll grab carriers and their email. We'll do push notifications, app notifications, SMS. We have a iPhone app, Android app, web version, whatever. Mm-hmm. Whatever way the carrier wants it to work with us, we're able to work with them. And it's all about trying to drive carrier retention and have the same drivers, the same trucks, pick up the same loads over and over and over and over again. Sure. And if we do our job right, we can get almost all of our freight booked that way.
Instagram in a second.
I kind of get on I spin on I spin like off topic sometimes.
No, I like that.
So I just keep it.
It was good. I would love to, one thing, when you got started from ground zero, how was getting your first customer? How did that whole experience look like? First, second, third customer?
Yeah.
How was it that grind with obtaining, going from nothing? I mean, maybe you had some relationships or something. And that's a touchy subject to get on. It's also understandable.
No, we were cold calling. We would cold call customers, and we would, you try to have some institutional knowledge about their business and bring up something that, they can tell that you know what you're talking about. And then once you get someone's attention, you just have to convince them to give you one shot. Typically, once I get on the phone with a prospect, it's pretty easy to get them to give you a shot, just because what do they have to lose? Are you working with brokers already? Yes. Do you have freight today? Yes. why don't you give me one load, and let me show you what we can do.
Yeah.
Show you what it's like to work with Edge. Show you what the future of freight looks like, and how good this business can be. You know? And if you say and then you get a shot, and then it's all about just picking up and delivering loads on time. If you pick up and deliver one load on time, they'll give you 2 more. Pick up and deliver 2, they'll give you 4 more. You know what I mean? That's just how this business works. Back then, it was way easier because there was no visibility. You know what I mean? Customers are way better at vetting and way better at, and they have way higher service expectations now than they did before. And a lot of that is because of digital freight matching. Companies like Uber and Convoy and C.H. Robinson and XPO and LoadSmart and others have brought the information to. Are we recording or no?
Yeah, we're recording.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
sorry. Have brought the information to the shippers, and the shippers have got smarter, and they made different different tactical decisions. So now it's a little harder to get in.
Sure.
And typically, you have to do some sort of like mix between contract and spot freight depending on what the case wants.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we would cold call. Same way we still get business. Yeah. You call people and you ask for what you want, and that is truckload freight opportunity. Yeah.
And how do you get leads?
Well, we're really, really fortunate in trucking that lead generation is pretty easy. All we have to really do is like go to any grocery store and walk up and down the aisles and see who's selling stuff. Or go to any Home Depot and walk up and down the aisles and see who's manufacturing stuff. Or go to Google any, top 10 this, top 10 that, or whatever. But the enterprise shippers are all around us. As Americans, we all do business with them every single day. And, so for us, it's pretty easy to find the leads. It's the big shippers. It's the ones who are operating nationally typically is what we're looking for.
Really?
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier you were at 50 million in 2018. Could you tell us where you're at right now?
Last year we did 137.9 million. This year we're just over like 130 right now, and we're probably going to finish around 150, 160.
Got it. Yeah. So in terms of like load volume, you've seen an increase for this year?
Yeah, we every year is a little different. Depending on what the
the cycle is.
Yeah, the revenue. I call them the revenue dynamics of the market.
Sure.
Where like last year we had really high revenue per load, unprecedented revenue per load, because rate per mile was really high. And then this year, that's not been the case. I think this year there's been the biggest gap between drop trailer pricing, drop capacity and live capacity. I think that live capacity has been so much more affordable than drop this year that it led to a negative spot environment, and that's kind of what we've been dealing with, for this season. But yeah, we've grown tremendously from a volume standpoint. Revenue per load's a little down due to the market dynamics, but margins have been really strong, and execution's been really good. So we're having a great year from an operating income perspective, from a growth perspective, on every KPI. Really besides top line growth. We're still growing. We're going to grow by tens of millions top line, but we're not being rewarded as much as we thought we would be, I guess we could say, due to the revenue dynamics of 2022.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you mind if I pop open Instagram?
Sure.
See what kind of questions we got for you?
Absolutely.
Let's see here. What impact has your office in Colombia on business?
We have about 70% of our employees in Colombia.
So wait, can you tell me how many employees you have in the States and how many you have, to break it down? Tough question.
We've hired over 100 people this year, globally.
100 people this year. You've hired 100 people this year.
Yeah. So
globally.
We've, it's kind of hard to keep track of.
When you say globally, do you mean outside of Colombia and the U.S. as well, or just Colombia and U.S.?
Between Colombia and the U.S.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So in Chicago, we have about 73 people, I believe. We just had a couple more people start in the last week or so it might be 75 now. And then in Detroit, we have about 15, and then in Phoenix, we have 11. So what is that? Let's see, 75, 15, 85, almost 100.
Okay.
And then, getting close.
Sure.
We'll be at 100 by the end of the year in the States.
Okay.
And then in Barranquilla, we have about 135 people
Wow.
in our call center, in the support center in Colombia that does a number of job functions throughout our organization. And then we also have about 23 people in Medellin on our software development team.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be even more next year. Yeah.
And the Phoenix office just opened, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have
Why Phoenix?
I love Phoenix.
Okay.
Manifest destiny, right? No, I'm just kidding. The westward expansion's always been part of our business plan. All the brokerages that I've admired, in my career have had West Coast boots on the ground presences. I believe it's important for a number of reasons. But the most obvious one is we're able to be open longer without having to strain our employees here in Chicago and in Detroit. Our Detroit office, they get in there between 6:30 and 7 a.m. Eastern time. So by the time we get to 5 o'clock Central, to ask people to work those kind of hours is not something that we're allowed to really do in this business anymore. Back when I was a carrier rep, we did. Yeah, that's for sure. But now, with where we're at from a recruiting and, work-life balance and mental health and like all these really positive trends over the last 10 years, we don't try to ask people to work those kind of crazy hours anymore. We try to create a more supportive environment, So part of it is that we can extend our business hours to about 6 p.m. Western time, or 8 p.m. Chicago time, or 9 p.m. Detroit time, while still being open early in the morning. And that gives us, it helps our employees, but it also helps our, execution, because we operate freight 24 hours a day. The freight one of our big sayings here is the freight never stops. We have pickups every 15 minutes, all day, every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, except for like Christmas, and Thanksgiving. Those are like the only two. So having that time zone footprint really helps. So that's the obvious one. The second one is regional business networks. Something I've learned, throughout my career is that, the way shippers and distribution networks are set up in the United States is very much the same way that like college conferences are set up, where like the Southeast, there's a lot of businesses that are Southeast based, and they do business in the Southeast and they ship regionally in the Southeast.
Sure.
Northeast, same thing. Southwest, same thing. Western 9, same thing. Great Plains, Midwest, Upper Midwest, same thing, right? Yeah. They have all these, we're not talking about like the biggest national companies, but that next tier, there's all these regional networks, right? And unless you are from there and you grew up with it and you understand the brands, and you understand the people, and you all went to the same types of colleges and you had the same types of shared experiences growing up, it's very difficult to win business in those markets from a customer sales standpoint. Yeah. So we want to have sales footprints everywhere so that we can be targeted on those regional sales networks. Like one example is like beer, right? Like on the West Coast, everybody drinks Coors Light, right? In the Midwest, everybody drinks Miller Lite. In the Southeast, everybody drinks Bud Light. It's just like, and it's like, from a volume perspective, it's like very, very true, right? Or like grocery stores, right? Like Southeast is Publix. Midwest is Kroger.
Yeah.
Like West Coast is like, whatever. There's a lot, but you get the point, right? Sure. And unless you grow up with it, and unless your social networks, your life experiences are all from that, it's hard to have a really sincere ability to serve those parts of the country.
Totally.
So that's like the other one. And then the third one is I just love it out there. I'm from Chicago. It's cold here in the winter. I was like, all right, if we're gonna get another office on the West Coast, it's gonna be somewhere hot, and somewhere we can play golf in the winter and all that good stuff, right? So so that was a huge part of it too.
Okay.
It's just an amazing place.
Yeah.
It's got a great attitude. The people of Phoenix and Arizona really are young. They're hungry. they want to make money, and there's not, as much opportunity there as there is maybe in Chicago or the East Coast or some other places.
Yeah.
At least that's what we think. That's what we're banking on.
Totally. Will, do you have any freight stories? Any funny freight stories from your time that you could tell us?
Like what? You gotta be more specific. What do you
got?
So,
Danny Frisco.
Something going wrong? Is that what you mean? Or?
Something going wrong, something funny. I'm just gonna give you an example. So Danny Frisco, the CEO of Rapido Solutions, was on my podcast a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how when he was at Coyote, a truck driver he had a relationship with was telling him how he's going to be in Chicago, and he wanted to stop by and say hello.
Yeah, I saw that.
He rolls up in the truck, and obviously the driver takes out some weed, and Denny's like, I got to run for the hills now, and anything along those lines where
I've got a good freight disaster one. How about that? Is that good? All right. Yeah. So this is the worst load I've ever booked. All right. Okay. The biggest disaster I ever had. I'm gonna try to use some general names so that I don't get anybody in trouble.
We can beep out names as well.
But anyways, we were. I was at the old shop. I was a carrier rep, and I booked this load, and it was from Arizona to Chicago. All right, and it was a drive-in load, but it was. All right, so to back up, we had this great idea that we would load copper coils on drive-ins because it'd be cheaper because the flatbeds were so expensive, and that if we only put 2 coils on the axle and and blocked and braced it, that it would be fine as long as it was underweight, right? So we were doing it and we were getting away with it for the most part, and it was going fine. But I booked one of them. It was from Arizona to Chicago. And about 2 days into the transit, things started going wrong. We had a flat tire at Cape Girardeau, Missouri. We had we blew a U-bolt in the drive shaft or something like that. The next day, and we were waiting for a repair and blah blah blah. I was getting the classic, west side of Chicago run around. And this carrier that we had booked happened to be from the Elk Grove Village area, and had a number of trucks, and this was long before tracking, GPS tracking, and all that. So we just really didn't know what was going on. So Jake Halprin got in Jake's car, and we drove out to their office because we couldn't get him on the phone. And Jake walks in, and I was like 21 at the time. All right, I have no idea I'm terrified. I'm like, these guys are gonna kill us. I was like, we're gonna go into a carrier's office in Elk Grove Village and tell them that that they screwed up and we're mad at them. They're gonna kill us. So we went in, and Jake immediately, we look, and there's this whiteboard, kind of like that one right there, and they had all the loads.
Yeah.
And there was two things, and there was one that was over the road, OTR, over the road, and there was one that was rail. And there under the rail, we saw our load. And we were like, oh, so you railed it. Great. When can we get it back? What's going on? You weren't supposed to do that, but at least it's not stolen. Do you know how much 40,000 pounds worth of copper is worth?
How much?
At the time, it was $400,000.
Was it insured for that much?
No. And I think now it's probably $1 million.
Okay.
I don't know. But what happened was, remember how I told you how they loaded the truck? They had on the axles, blacked and braced.
Sure.
So when they took it to the choo-choo train, and the geniuses had put the cables on the trailer to lift it off the box and put it on the rail. They lifted it up in the air, and the trailer split right down the middle, and the 2 coils slammed together, and the trailer ripped in half, and then they fell out the back of the thing out of the ground. And there was a catastrophic disaster at the rail yard. So we were like, oh my God, and it took, I don't know, a couple months to get the freight back, and we had to basically, not me, but The customer rep had to call the shipper and explain, what had happened and where the freight was and all that. But that was the worst load I've ever had. It took about 10 days to figure out what was going on, learn what happened, and then another like 2 months to resolve. And that's just a lesson of don't rail freight that you don't know what's in the trailer. Only certain types of freight can go on the railroad. And blocked and brace coils are not one of them. But I remember I was in my boss's office that night until like 9 p.m. and my cell phone was on my desk. And my wife thought I was dead. She was like, I get back to my desk after being like, think I was gonna get fired this whole time. And I look at my phone and I have like 50 missed calls and I'll never forget that one. Yeah, that was bad.
That was a great story.
Yeah. What else you got?
Let's see here.
The other funnier one was back in the day. I don't know if you remember this, but you probably do. But they used to do all kinds of shady things with the like double stacking trucks.
Oh, of course.
In Chicago.
Yeah, totally.
And one
I'm
time
Polish, so I know
that's
all
why I
of it.
said. That's why I didn't want to be. That's why I said you probably know what I'm talking about. But the first time I ever toured, I'm not gonna say which carrier it was, but. They've gone through a number of rebrands since this happened, but we were touring their yard, and they showed us the removable swing doors.
Of course.
On the double hinges.
That's probably Polmax.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, oh my God. Yeah. You guys, like, you cannot be doing this kind of stuff.
We've used that trick at my. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna get into it now.
That I was saying no names.
No
but
names.
that was the other really funny. Like I was like, oh my Lord, you guys are nuts. Yeah.
We once had a pallet. I'm just saying, we once had a pallet from Connecticut, going to like LA of beer.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be shipped a full truckload.
Yeah.
And instead it went to a warehouse in Elk Grove Village where the door was taken off.
Yeah.
And the driver was there and he was being explained everything because it was a driver that was, it wasn't like a company driver for the company. It was like a driver we brokered it out to.
Yeah.
So the driver shows up for like, we're going to take off the door,
Yeah.
the swing doors. Yeah. We're going to load up 2 more loads behind this pallet.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure that they offload it without cutting the seal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
try explaining that to like a Walmart. Yeah. They're like, listen, guys, we have special doors on this trailer. Just don't worry about it. Yeah. I got one more. I got another funny one I just thought of. One time we had a load of juice on a City Industry, and it disappeared. And we couldn't find, like who steals a load of juice? Right? Like it's like, what's the point? Like, what are you gonna do with it? You're gonna go? Are you selling like 1 gallon bottles of apple juice out of the back of the truck in the Inland Empire or something like that? Like, what's going on? And but anyways, this truck of juice disappeared. And I don't know if any of you ever had to deal with the stolen load before, but in America nobody cares. There's nobody to call. You could call the FBI, but they don't really care. Unless it's like the mafia or something. So you're kind of on your own. From a security standpoint, and there's some services and that sort of thing that you can use, but in general you're largely on your own. Mm-hmm. But this one time we had a load of juice disappear, and we found this guy. We have this guy who works here named Mark Bejan, who's a legend carrier up. I'm sure a lot of the carriers who listen to this podcast are friends with him. But he called the California Highway Patrol, Chips, and he found this guy who was a total cowboy, and he got him on our side. And he got him all gung-ho about our investigation. And we had this angel of a California Highway Patrol officer take this case upon himself, when it was way above and beyond the call of duty. But he was just because it was wrong. You can't just steal truckloads of freight, right? So this guy ran this incredible investigation. And we were working with him every day, and he's like running around, industry and Oxnard and all that, like with a flashlight, looking at trailer numbers and all that stuff. And eventually he found it. He found the trailer in this random yard, and they opened it up, and the guy we hired was sitting in the back of the trailer with like pallets of juice all around him, sitting at a desk brokering freight, using it as an office, just with all the freight. And it's like, and the highway patrol's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, you stole. This is all stolen. Like what are you doing here? He's like, and he's acting like it's his property. And that like, why are you bothering me while I'm in the middle of the workday in the back of this trailer in a yard in Oxnard? And we got it back or whatever, but that was just like another one of those.
Was it a reefer trailer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had to probably reefer on it.
Oh no, it was all done. Yeah, it all got rejected, and a whole big claim and mess.
I'm talking about more about him being in an AC like unit, like.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was a reefer trailer.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was like refrigerator. That would probably be a little cold. But can you keep a reefer? You can keep a reefer at like a nice 72, right? Yeah. Yeah, but he was living in it and working out of it, and all our freight was all around it, and that was one of the weirdest ones I ever had. It was like
super weird.
It was like, what happened to lead to that result?
Sure.
But yeah, little weird things like that happen all the time in this business.
So you'd call him, and he had like would he pick up when you called him like prior to this, like?
Oh yeah, and then he became less and less helpful over time, as it typically goes in these lost load situations. But yeah, there's a lot of characters in this business, Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of characters.
But that cop, that highway patrol guy, I can't remember his name, but he's a real freight hero. That guy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, he deserves to be honored.
Mark. I'll let you know. Yeah.
He deserves like a plaque. And all that good stuff. So what's next for Edge? What's the goal?
We're just really focused on growth.
Okay.
We're trying to, we've got a really great product. Both from technology, workflows, systems, personnel. Our management team's amazing. And now we're really focused on just scaling and just trying to get as many customers as we can, as many loads as we can, as quickly as we can, and just doing a great job, rising the ranks within the carrier networks and just biting off more and more market share from the big guys. But we think that in the next 2 to 3 years we can get to $1 billion.
Wow, you're almost like one of the big guys.
We cracked the top 100 last year. I think this
Nice.
year we'll probably be, based on last year's revenue numbers, we'll probably be in like the 60s or 70s.
Amazing.
But also, it's a much more difficult revenue environment, so we'll see how everybody else does.
Yeah.
I like to think we might get climb the ladder a little more because we're doing pretty well, and I like to think others might not be. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Of course. Cool. Let me see if there's any more questions. But then, I really like talking to you, Will. I like your enthusiasm.
I love freight. That's our big motto here is love the freight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's one. Tips and advice for a startup asset-based brokerage with 20 to 25 trucks. What would you give? What kind of advice would you give to someone who has 20 to 25 trucks and is opening up a freight brokerage?
You need to use your trucks as a harpoon, right? You need to use your trucks in order to get freight brokerage business. The best way to do that is to offer, some sort of drop trailer capacity. That's the main thing that asset carriers can do better than we can. That's pretty much the only thing left is drop trailer. And so if you can do that, you'll be able to get a lot of doors opened. And if you get the doors open, then you have an opportunity to execute. And then if you're able to execute on the brokerage side, you can grow really fast. I think, things to be to be concerned about, on the other side of it is wild goose chases. A lot of times when you're a young startup, you just want any deal, right? Right now you got no deals, and I need some deals, right?
Yeah.
But it's very important to still be selective and to set yourself up for success. There's a lot of shippers and a lot of facilities and a lot of small and medium-sized shippers. They know their business a lot better than you do, and they're looking. They can at times have different motives. And unless you really understand all the case-specific non-monetary variables, it's very easy to get caught in a situation where you've allocated capacity for a long period of time and you're not going to be able to hit your profitability numbers. And whenever that does happen, you have to be able to be honest about it and get yourself out of that bad situation. So I would use my trucks as a harpoon to target live freight brokerage business. It's very important that you communicate these different levels of service with your customer and you're honest about it. The worst thing you can do as an asset-based broker is tell them that all the loads are being booked on your trucks and then broker them out. And why is that? It's because you're not going to make sense. It's not going to, yes, the world between asset carriers and brokerages and mixed offerings and pure brokerage versus pure asset is blending, 100%. There's brokers who are investing in assets. There's assets who are investing in brokerages. And while that continues to happen, it's just very important that you don't misrepresent yourself, because if you do, it'll blow up in your face.
Sure.
Because the shippers are smart.
Yeah, and they're getting smarter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the current tech and VC money that's, I guess, coming into the industry? What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to be what's going to happen in the next 10 years that you think will change the industry? Do you foresee any of this tech, innovation, VC money actually making a big change? Yeah,
I think the big transformation that we're going to go through in the industry over the next 10, 15 years is going to be about decreasing fraud and increasing speed. I see a lot of similarities between our industry and what stock trading and stock brokering was like back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And basically what happened was, back in the day, if you wanted to buy a share of AT&T, for example, you would write a letter with a check to investor relations at AT&T, and then they would send you a certificate of stock, and you would hold it, right? Yeah. And that would be yours. That's your share, right? And you would have to keep track of all your shares. Every time you wanted to buy a stock, you'd have to go through the same process with the direct investor relations and buy that share. And that's kind of like where we're at right now in freight brokerage, right? Where everybody's doing business in this fragmented way. And the reason for that is fraud. And there was the same reason that they did it in the stock market back then, is because it was at the time, with the technology available, it was the only secure way to make sure there wasn't going to be any fraud in this deal. Both the seller of the stock and the buyer of the stock had to have these rigid safeguards in place that slowed down transactional business in order to maintain credibility and decrease fraud. And in our business, what does that look like? That looks like carriers taking loads and not picking them up. It looks like brokers selling loads that don't exist. It looks like bait and switch. It looks like same-day cancel. It's like shippers canceling loads on brokers who then have to cancel loads on carriers. Brokers telling carriers that loads are canceled. Carriers telling brokers that drivers aren't empty. Whatever it may be. Whatever the reason is. But we have a way. Our bounce percentage industry-wide is out of control. And if we're able to, through technology and through cooperation, really, in the brokerage community, and through not really, I guess cooperation is a bad word. I think how about more agreeing on standards, standardizing the unstructured, taking unstructured data and giving it structure, right, and being able to monetize the variables that used to be non-monetary, right? And be able to have logic that allows that all to happen. And if we can do that, And if we can make it so when a carrier buys my load on capacity, they pick it up at acceptable on-time pickup percentage of 97 or 96 or something like that. Once we can get there, then we can go faster. Then all of a sudden, we can send loads to carriers and they can just go pick them up. We don't have to have all these double checks and tracking and verifications and PODs and call the driver and get them on MacroPoint or get them on forecards or whatever it may be, right? And all these little things that we spend all this money on trying to make sure the guys could actually pick up the load they said he was going to, right? And if we can eliminate that fraud from the industry, then we could trade freight as fast as they trade stocks. Now, because what happened was, in finance, they invented swaps, options, smart contracts, where all of a sudden an A share of AT&T is an A share of AT&T, and it's the exact same whether you buy it from Goldman Sachs or Merrill Lynch or Bank of America or whoever, right? And if we can make loads like that, where a load from Elk Grove Village to Savannah, Georgia, is a load from Elk Grove Village to Savannah, Georgia. The experience that carrier is going to have is going to be similar across the network, no matter what the shipper is, no matter what the commodity is, no matter what the non-monetary variables of that load are. And if we're able to do that through artificial intelligence and algorithmic digital freight matching, then we're going to be able to increase our loads per person dramatically. If we're able to increase our loads per person dramatically, we're going to be able to attack different types of freight in the market. And that's the most exciting part. Because right now, the revenue dynamics of freight brokerage box us out of most of the freight, right? As we make, if we make 12%, call it 12%, right? If a broker's fair rate is a 12% margin or 10% margin, right? Yeah. If you're taking 12% off of $500, that's $60. If you're taking 12% off of $1,000, it's $120. If you're taking 12% off $2,000, it's $240, right?
Sure.
So if our cost per load is pretty fixed, right, we can't take those lower dollar loads, right? Mm-hmm. But if we have speed and if we have reliability and if we can book loads in a frictionless environment between the shipper and the carrier, then we can all of a sudden, because our cost per transaction will be so far lower than it is right now. And when that happens, we're going to be able to take all the mid-haul freight, and then that's when the next glory era of freight brokerage is going to happen. Is when we're able to really hone in on those, $700 and less line haul charges.
Like a high frequency trading type deal.
Yeah. And by doing so, we're going to be able to change, the status quo expectations of doing business forever. And that's what I think the future of freight is. And I don't think there's anything that could stop it.
Cool.
I think that's one of the biggest scams to hit the industry in a long time.
Lane pricing?
Future hedging of lane pricing. You want to know how you hedge freight? Use a good broker. That's how you hedge freight. Yeah. Hedge logistics. Yeah. Brokers are the hedge. Here's the problem with futures. All right? The cost of the hedge is more than the benefit of the hedge.
So you pay more for the data or the...
Well, you're talking about buying options, right?
Oh, buying options. Okay.
To offset, like what FreightWaves are trying to do.
Yeah, sure.
So if you try to buy options on futures of rates to protect your upside spot, here's what happens. You still have to pay all the money for the spot, right? So, it's not like it goes away. You just get a check from Wall Street to make up for the money that you're spending.
Yeah.
Right? So how about this? How about instead of being like, I'm going to book really cheap contracted freight with carriers and brokers, right? I'm going to take on spot exposure, right? Because of my really aggressive pricing, right? But I'm going to buy the futures so that even if I get smoked on the spot market, don't worry. I got my downside protection. But we all know that in the trenches, it doesn't work that way. You still have, if you buy cheap contracted freight, no hedge, no amount of compensation coming back will fix your company. You are going to have service issues like your on-time pick, your tender acceptance, your on-time delivery, your GPS tracking, all of those things are going to shatter before all your freight hits the spot market. And then you're going to be playing catch up the entire season. And what, you're supposed to be happy because you have the future check coming back? There's no way that an incremental amount of money that you get to compensate you for being overexposed to the spot market is worth the headaches, the problems, the service issues you have in your business that you're gonna have by having that strategy. And I think that that was an idea that was like very buzzwordy and cool. And like for me, it's not about futures, it's about swaps, it's about capacity options, right? And being able to trade capacity, not trade loads, right? Mm-hmm. Do you see the difference? That's what I think the future is. But yeah, it's idiotic, because like, think about what happens to your carrier network. Think of what happens to your business when your routing guide shatters and when everything hits the spot market. Your problem isn't the amount of money you're paying for the spot freight. Your problem is that you're not getting any trucks picking up your loads. You're playing from behind. You're not ahead of it. And your customers are gonna get real sick and tired of their orders not being delivered on time. And for most of our shippers, an incremental difference in rate is always worth getting it right the first time, right? And having your routing guide hold up is so much more important than thinking you have some sort of backside protection in the future. Oh, and by the way, you don't get paid for like a long time either. You have to pay out that entire time until it finally comes, right? Sure. And then the other thing about futures is, 90% of options expire worthless. You know what I mean? Like, you have to get the market and the timing right in order to win on a future. Sure. So there's a lot of situations where your routing guide falls apart, and your spot and you're getting crushed on the spot freight market, and your future doesn't work out. It could be a lot of things. You know what I mean? So, or maybe your future is working out during the summer when you're getting crushed, and then by the time it comes to be realized, things are different now, and the market's changed, right? Yeah. Like all kinds of, there's so many reasons why it's just better to work with a great broker who you know, like, and trust, who understands your business, and who does business the right way, where they're gonna give you honest, contracted rates that they're going to honor and pick up and deliver regardless of the market conditions. But if the market conditions swing out of the favor, then they're gonna have to make it up for it with the spot freight, right? With over tendering, right? And unless a case has both quality contracted freight and access to spot in the event of an accelerated market, it's not a good case for a freight broker. Sure. And those are not the kind of customers that we want to work with. We want to work with the kind of customers who deeply value being on time and having a high quality operation. Yeah. Because for whatever their business reasons are, it matters way more to them that things go right than taking on some crazy rating risk trying to get paper rates in your network. Just like it doesn't matter. I'll never understand why shippers let both new carriers and new brokers in and they bid rates that are way less than their entire carrier network who understands their business, and they're like, okay, I guess these guys have some sort of like magic secret sauce that allows them, like we talked about earlier, they got magic trucks that pick up and deliver on time for less than everybody else. It's like, I think it's much more likely that they don't know what they're doing and that they bid a really bad rate. And if you give them that rate and you give them that award, they're gonna fail it. Yeah. That's what's gonna happen.
Totally. Or they're gonna lose a lot of money.
Or they're gonna try like hell to survive it and they're gonna get smoked. Yeah. And that happens to us too. It doesn't always work out. Like we have many times where, pricing doesn't work out how we thought, and then it's just a matter of, being able to overcome it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, the last question is, you have this company that's almost generating this year $150 million in revenue, all these employees. How do you maintain a work-life balance? What's your schedule like?
So I have an amazing management team. Something that I've been really focused on the last, since COVID really, is building out a really experienced management team that I can count on. Where I want to be able to work on the business, not in the business. You know what I mean? And I have teams in place to do that for me. Sure. And as we've scaled, Kevin Nolan from Nolan NTG?
NTG, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So he told me something a long time ago that really stuck with me. He said, we're trying to go from $1 billion to $2 billion. Nobody on my team knows what $2 billion worth of freight looks like. Like, we need to hire people right now who have seen $2 billion worth of freight, right? And I was like, it's a humble but intelligent stance, right? And so what we've tried to do is hire people who know what our future looks like, who have been through it before, who have worked at some of the great Chicago freight brokerage firms that we talked about earlier, and who have climbed the mountain already. And so I lean on them pretty much 100% to run the day-to-day operations of the company. And then I've got an amazing family, an amazing wife who's very supportive, and my son that helped keep me grounded and humble and focused. And then, I try to spend a lot of time outside. I love fresh air. I love walking. One of the great things about living in Chicago is you can walk everywhere. And then, I play a lot of golf. Yeah, golf's my like, all right, if I'm feeling like I'm about to lose my mind, I gotta get out of here and go play a little golf. Sure. I find it very relaxing.
Awesome. Yeah. I like that answer.
And then obviously Chardonnay and the classics. A couple cocktails here and there.
He seems like you're a classics guy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Will, thank you so much for taking your time today.
Yeah, of course. This was really fun. You guys are welcome back anytime. Let me know if you need anything else, all right?
Appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah. Just make sure you make me look cool on this, all right?
Of course.
Yeah. All right, great.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.